Hi, in this mathcast we want to take a look at two things here. First, the notion of making scatter plots, and then regression modeling. In particular, we want to take a look at the notion of nonlinear modeling. So if you're in a statistics class and you're talking about modeling, this would help you there. Also, if you're taking applied calculus, this would also be helpful to you as well. So let's start out with an example and take a look at that. Lately, there's been a lot of talk in Arizona about new laws that have come into place. So I looked up the population growth of Arizona from 1971 to 2009 and wrote the data down. And it's actually the second fastest growing state in the country. Utah is growing at a little bit faster rate, but is a smaller state. So let's take a look at this data. In 1971, there were 1,771,000 people. You can think of that as 1.771 million people if you'd prefer. And then I picked out dates from 1971 and then 1980 and so forth up to 2009. So what we want to do first is to make a scatter plot of the data. So to do that, first, we've normalized the independent variable and listed those in the left-hand column. So the number of years since 1970 will be our base mark. So notice the x values, so to speak, in the chart will go from 1, corresponding to 1971, up to 39, corresponding to 2009. So we'll put the data for the left-hand column here in list 1, and then these population values in list 2. So let's look at our calculator now. To do that, we want to hit the Stat button on the calculator, and then select option 1 for Edit. Now notice to save a little bit of time, I went ahead and put the values in list 1 and list 2. You simply punch them in and then use the right cursor key to get over to list 2, type in those numbers, hit the enter key after each one, and now we want to go ahead and set up our scatter plot. To do that, let's hit the second key on the calculator and then the Y equals key to get the stat plot menu. Now we'll go ahead and make this scatter plot plot 1, so I'll go ahead and hit enter. And now we want to turn the plot on. So I've highlighted on and I'll hit enter on that. And then we want to identify the type of plot we want to make. And the scatter plot is the very first one. So I'll just go ahead and hit enter there. And then let's scroll down. The x values are in list number 1, so we'll leave that the same. The y values are in list number 2, we'll leave that the same. If you want to change any of those, all you have to do is hit the second key and then the list number that you want. So if I wanted to put list 3 here, for example, I would hit the second key and number 3, and then that would change to list 3. And then down below, that puts down the kind of mark you want to make. I always just use this little square because it's the easiest one to see. So let me go ahead and hit second and quit to get out of that and clear the screen. Now we have to set the viewing window so that we can actually see the data that we're going to plot. And let's let the calculator do that for us. To do that, let's go ahead and hit the zoom key. That's on the top row of keys in the center. And notice if I scroll down here to item 9, it says zoom stat. That'll automatically set up the viewing window for you. So now if I go ahead and hit enter, notice here's our scatter plot. So notice the values kind of increase, and they increase at an increasing rate. So let's go ahead and answer the question here, the first part. So the scatter plot for the data, there it is right there, just what we were looking at. And now, what did I say there? The values look like they're increasing at an increasing rate. And so that's why we might want to use a exponential sort of function to model this data. So that was part B. Determine an exponential model of the data in the form a times b to the x power, and round a and b to 2 decimal places. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's get back to our calculator. And now we want to go ahead and put that function. We want to figure out what that function would be for this data that we have. To do that, we'll hit the Stat key, and then hit the right cursor key to go over to the Calc menu, and then scroll down, and then we'll see the different kinds of regression models we can have. Option 4 is the linear regression. That's what you're most used to, MX plus B type for the linear model. Then we have quadratic and cubic regression. Quartic regression we can also do. Linear regression in the more traditional form, A plus BX. Right below that is LN reg for logarithmic regression. But we want option 0 here that says exponential regression. So I'll just go ahead and hit enter there. Now we have to specify where the data is. The X values are in list number 1, so I'll hit the second key and number 1 to get list 1, and then a comma, and then the second key and number 2 for list 2. That is where the Y values are. And one more thing we can do. If we want to have the calculator store the regression model for us, let's go ahead and do that too. I'll hit the comma one more time, and we'll store the data in Y1. To do that, we'll go up and hit the vars key, hit the right cursor key to go to Y variables, and we want to save a function, so I'll just go ahead and hit enter over function, and we want to store it in Y1, so I'll hit enter again. And now, when I hit the enter key now, we'll go ahead and get the regression output. So there it is. Notice there we get the form A times B to the X power. A is 1,818.36 rounded to 2 decimal places. And then the base of our exponent is 1.03, again rounded to 2 decimal places. So that's answer B. And let's take a look at that just to make sure we have it written down. So there it is. The exponential model for the data is 1,818.36 times 1.03 to the X for our reasonable domain 1 to 39. X represents the number of years since 1970. F of X is the Arizona population in thousands. Now finally, let's go ahead and graph that function, regression model that we found over top of our scatter plot. Notice if I hit the Y equals key, top row on the left, look, there's that function we have. We don't have A and B rounded to 2 decimal places. That's all right. So let's go ahead and plot that now. So to do that, I'll just go ahead and hit graph. And then there's our scatter plot. And here comes our function cutting right through the data. So that's how we do a scatter plot and do nonlinear regression modeling.